If you are a leader who is looking to get energized, then stick around for today's episode on the Meeting Leadership Podcast, because today we've got another inspiring leadership story, and our guest is Elise Keith from Lucid Meetings.
Are you a professional who wants to become a more effective leader? Then get ready for daily tips from the coach, with the experience and inspiration to help you succeed in any leadership situation. You're listening to the Meeting Leadership Podcast with Gordon Shepherd.
Welcome to another episode of the Meeting Leadership Podcast. My name is Gordon Shepherd. I want to say thanks for being here, whether you're on the treadmill, maybe you're driving in the car. Thanks for taking time out of your valuable day to spend time on the podcast here, getting inspired, getting another practical tip, getting something that you can take out to make your next meeting way, way better. It is honestly really good to have you here. And today on the show, I am really glad to say that we've got another installment from our Inspiring Leadership Stories. This is where we take some of the great guests that we've had on the show and we just ask them that simple question: what inspires you? And I can tell you what's transpiring in today's show with Elise Keith from Lucid Meetings is absolutely a blockbuster. And for those of you who haven't caught up with Elise just yet, she was on episode 110 on the Meeting Leadership Podcast. It was called How Lucid Provides a Systematic Approach for Highly Effective Meetings. And you can get that episode by going to meetingleadershipinc.com/110. And then Elise came back on episode 117, and it was called How the Successful Meetings Quick Start Program Can Help You Grow. And you can get that episode by going to meetingleadershipinc.com/117. And for those of you who'd like just a few more details, let me tell you about Elise. Now, she is the founder and CEO of Lucid Meetings. She's also the author of Where the Action Is, the meetings that make or break your organization. She writes for big publications like Inc.com, and I think fundamentally, she leads a company that is out there to really influence thousands and thousands of other companies to change their culture by really improving their meetings, and really their leaders are taking it way up to the next level after she comes in and does her great work with her team. And with that in mind, I'm not going to make you wait any longer. Here's the inspiring interview with Elise Keith. Elise Keith, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
So lucky to have an expert like you on episode 110, episode 117. I'm going to make sure I explain that very thoroughly in the show notes here, where people can go and learn from you about this really important and current way to help get change into their meetings and ultimately go way beyond that and change the entire cultures of their organizations for the better to become high performers. It's just lucky to have you here. For the folks that are actually, though, hearing you for the first time, how do you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Elise Keith. I'm the CEO and founder of Lucid Meetings, where it's our mission to make it easy for teams to run successful meetings every day.
And you come by that honestly. I can really attest. I'm enrolled right now in one of the courses on your website. I can hear from all the work that you're doing. In the introduction, we talked about the fact that you're contributing to Inc. magazine at that level. I mean, you are all over this topic. But today, it's actually part of our Inspiring Leadership Stories series. And that's that chance to bring back great guests from the show to actually learn about what inspires them. So I'm just going to stop for a second and say that simple question: what inspires you?
I am inspired by seeing what great teams are able to accomplish and hearing their stories. So it comes from everywhere. There are so many examples of fabulous and interesting ways of working that it's just too much fun not to work on it.
Well, and I know you're a great storyteller, so I've got to jump in there and say, well, what's one of those fabulous teams that's actually inspired you, and let us know.
I find it everywhere. And this is, I think, one of the things that makes our work so much fun. Like, who says that, right? We're meeting experts, which of course is a blast.
Meetings, fun, doesn't go together.
No, but it is. It totally is. So if you go and you pick up any modern business book and you see what they're talking about. So Brené Brown's Dare to Lead, for example. Now, Brené Brown is an expert in vulnerability and how we can bring vulnerability to the workplace to increase trust and connection and performance. And as you read her examples of how that works in practice, how her team makes vulnerability a part of what they do in a safe, powerful way, you'll see that she describes the way they run their meetings. I find that inspiring. Daniel Coyle's book, Culture Code. I've had many people come to me and they're like, did you notice that that book isn't mostly a book about meetings? And I'm like, oh, yes, I did. So there are NBA basketball teams, the Navy SEALs, Pixar, fabulous, famous restaurants. They all have really powerful ways that they come together as teams and talk about their work and move it forward. That kind of inspiration is just everywhere. Recently, I found it really fun. So I had a chance to talk to Ashley Goodall, who just wrote a book with Marcus Buckingham. And Marcus Buckingham, if you're not familiar with him, he's kind of the pioneer of the whole strengths movement, work from your strengths, strength finders and all of that.
Right. Yeah.
And they wrote a book called 9 Lies About Work, which is about all of the things that we're doing in our performance management system and in our HR systems that are actually huge wastes of time and not moving the ball forward. And they talked about how those things don't work, but here's what does. And Ashley Goodall, he's the vice president of leadership and innovation or something like that at Cisco. And he was able to put his ideas into practice. So at Cisco, they're trying to improve employee engagement. Cisco's a huge company, huge international company, thousands of employees all over the world. So what do? Well, they started to experiment with how team leaders run one-on-ones. And by changing the way they ran one-on-ones and creating a system that had this new way of running them, they were able, in fact, to reliably increase employee engagement scores and therefore overall company performance across 15,000 teams globally within 3 years.
That's moving a mountain. That is just unbelievable. A big inspiration for me is my own management time. When I was a corporate employee, 25,000 people, and I was an employee who died to be a manager until I became a manager. Right. So then there I am managing a little team of 9 people. Right. And you're just taking me back to literally that one-on-one disaster moment with my little team, and we had to score them from 1 to 4. And I would score half the people on the team a 4. They were doing a great job. I was really proud of them. And then I would take those results to my next up, and he would look at me and go, we can't give them a 4. If we give them a 4, we got to give them a raise, give them all 3. And that sort of just ridiculousness of the reality of these old systems. And to hear that a company like Cisco, that where you're talking about, because I'm getting inspired just thinking about what you're talking about now, to think that a company at that scale could be honest about it and actually dig in and find out what works and not have these sort of, consulting systems sort of forced onto people where they just want to rack up statistics that actually don't improve performance. I mean, this is completely inspiring. I'm so glad you're telling me this story.
It was really, really cool because, obviously at Cisco, they had to have a leader, and they do in their people and culture, their HR director, who had courage, right? He had courage to stop doing the inhumane, wasteful, expensive things that don't work. It takes courage to ditch your performance management system, even though it doesn't make anybody happy and it doesn't actually have any measurable, tangible results that you can rely on. But they did. They had that courage. And then the other thing that I find so exciting and inspiring about it, not surprising because our research shows this, but it's inspiring that they found the same results at scale, was that the way in which you can impact real change every day on the ground is by having great intention and clarity about how you run your conversations, right? How you run those meetings. And that was it. They designed those meetings. And then when they found the design that worked, they made that a performance metric for all of the team leaders and rolled it out. And by golly, if it doesn't work. And now they're starting to explore and experiment with the next level up meeting. So that was just one-on-ones. Like just this one practice. And now they're looking at how does the all hands update from the CEO impact that number? And how do the way that the whole team get together impact that number?
Well, and my hopes for
cool
these,
stuff.
If the large sort of corporate global folks can innovate in this area, which is sort of, this human behavior that we've had around for thousands of years, in a sense, for getting to this poor meeting zone that we're in now, I just hope that spills over to our politicians? Because when I think about the lousy example, and pick any country, it doesn't matter what they're doing at their whatever national levels, their sort of state, provincial levels, whatever those things are, those folks are not giving examples to our young people. All we see is bickering in the news and the amount of lost time. So the possibility that someone, say at that sort of Cisco level, might be able to then at some point influence what's actually going on in these other areas, and see if our institutions can take some of that and start to get that exchange going back and forth and get to really where meetings need to be for all of us. One of the things that I draw on in my own work is the fact that if we want to tackle the biggest issues of our time, we need to learn how to meet better. So we don't need to have another lousy climate change meeting. We need to have a meeting that is taking some of what that magic dust that you're saying is happening at Cisco from your work and get it injected into these big issue meetings so that they can actually move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I'm sure you found this with your own journey as you got into facilitation and whatnot. And it was something certainly I learned when I took my facilitation training. When you learn how to open a meeting well, how to frame it, how to ask the right questions, you can radically change what's possible in that room, and you can radically determine the results. It's kind of a superpower, but it's a superpower you can use both for good or for ill. And when you were talking about like our politicians, like their meetings are poisonous, and they're partially poisonous, I believe, on purpose, because they've got competing agendas and they're not actually particularly interested in working together, many of them. You can look at those as examples also of how you can use these powers to prevent progress or prevent change that you're not interested in seeing happen, and realize that that's a power you should learn to take yourself and put to good use in your companies and your communities.
I think that's so inspiring. I just realized that we could talk on and on and on. My favorite words today are intention and clarity. I'm going to really take that away. I'm going to remember this Cisco story forever. And I'm going to imagine, in a company with whatever it is, I'm going to guess there are hundreds of thousands of employees or whatever they're doing, it's possible. And again, I think your through line through all the times you've been here on the podcast is it's possible. And there's a way to do it. And I hope that people reach out to you at Lucid. If people need to get in touch, how can they do that?
You can find me and my team at lucidmeetings.com.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I have to honestly say, I feel really lucky to be able to interview people like Elise. Imagine being able to learn from their inspiration, carry that forward to people just like yourself, and really start to build capacity everywhere we go. It's just a great opportunity, and I love those pieces of intention and clarity, especially around meetings and meeting and culture change and all those good things that Elise and her team at Lucid Meetings are doing for thousands and thousands of companies. And if you'd like to hear even more from Elise, then check out episode 110 on the Meeting Leadership Podcast. It's called How Lucid Provides a Systematic Approach for Highly Effective Meetings. And you can get that episode by going to meetingleadershipinc.com/110. And after you check out episode 110, then listen to episode 117. It's called How the Successful Meetings Quick Start Program Can Help You Grow. And there again, Elise Keith provides a ton of value. And you can get that episode by going to meetingleadershipinc.com/117. And I also want to let you know that this episode of the Meeting Leadership Podcast is brought to you by the Meeting Leadership Academy. Now there, you're going to find some terrific live training options and online training options for you and your team to improve your meetings, grow your leadership skills, and really take it up a notch. So I hope you go to meetingleadershipinc.com/academy to learn more. And if you haven't done it yet, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. And we'd also really appreciate it if you leave a rating and review, because then we can respond to it and program even more great content in upcoming episodes. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Meeting Leadership Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Meeting Leadership Podcast. Be sure to subscribe for more strategies to help you become an outstanding leader. And don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you fresh content every day. We'll see you tomorrow, right here on the Meeting Leadership Podcast.
I'm on top of the forgiving, not even close to the